I'm looking forward to this. This will be fun. I just have a feeling about this. We were introduced to Janet and Stewart Swerdlow of expansions.com by one of you. You often write in and say, hey, why don't you talk to these people? So we kind of got communicating with Janet and Stuart, who live in Michigan. And the more we read about them, I said, well, yeah, we got to do this because we love talking about consciousness and God and soul and mind and brain and reality and programming and all these kinds of things. Janet has a very interesting background. When she was born, she was consciously aware of what she calls oversoul. I've heard that term before, but we'll dig into that in God-mind connections. And she was also aware that there was programming going on before birth, and she was involved with the Magdalene lineage. So that's all cool to find out about. And then she somehow hooked up with Stuart, and we'll find out about Stuart, how they did that. And he's a medical intuitive, a clairvoyant. Had quite an interesting lineage himself. His great uncle was the first president of the Soviet Union, and grandfather actually helped to bring in communism into the United States in the 30s. So his parents have all kinds of interesting background with intelligence and doing psychic work and things like that with the governments. And we all know that they do those kinds of things. Well, Janet and Stuart, thanks so much for being available. And how are things in Michigan?
Well, thank you for inviting us, and things in Michigan are finally sunny and cooler.
Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And as you were talking about earlier, you need rain. We're going to give you some of ours because we've had a ton of it this year.
Yeah, they just had so much up there, huh? How'd you all find your way to Michigan? Well, first off, how did you meet? I mean, with this kind of background, obviously, karmically, boy, it was kismet. You found each other.
Well, it's a very long story, which I'll say very briefly, although you can read about the details in Stuart's autobiography called Montauk Alien Connection.
Montauk Alien Connection?
Yes.
Holy cow.
That's his autobiography where he writes about how that we actually met along with a myriad of other of his experiences. But anyway, he had a friend and I had a friend, and basically this one friend knew both of us, and she said to Stuart, you ought to meet this person, she'll be like a sister to you. So he placed a phone call. He was in New York, I was in Washington State. He placed the phone call, I answered it, and long story short, I wound up in New York with him, and here we are today.
How long ago was that?
It was about 15 years ago.
My goodness. Well, but you're more than a sister. Just kidding.
Yes.
Okay.
A little bit different than that.
Well, that's good, because Stuart said, I need another sister like I need,
Exactly.
I don't need another sister here. Oh, that's so funny. So what an interesting relationship you all must have. Do you tend to pick up things from each other, communicate telepathically, like Stuart's on the way home and pick up a carton of milk and he gets it and that kind of thing?
Well, we don't drink milk, so no.
Yeah, well, that was a bad example.
No, it's easy. No, we do. Actually, we have a very interesting life. It's never dull. And yes, we do communicate on a different level than most people, but that's what keeps our relationship alive and entertaining.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And the way you spend most of your time, I assume, Stuart, do you both write and you do consultations with people through your website and help them get their life on track?
That's right. We do a lot of consultations. We get hundreds of emails every day. We do news updates, Q&As, and I travel a lot. So most of the time I'm not even here.
What do you do on your travels, Stuart?
Well, I do lectures, I do seminars, consultations, you name it, I do it. We do a lot of historical tours where we take people to various locations on the earth and we teach them the real history of that area.
Oh, you mean what we're being told is not the truth?
You think?
You think?
Yeah, maybe, a little bit. Yes, for example, we took a whole group of people to south of France, and we went to the chateau, and we went to the Magdalene area in the southern Hebrew kingdom of France that very few people know about. And we went to the cave where Mary Magdalene was hiding out for many years, and went to her gravesite in Paris. And this past winter, January, we took a bunch of people to Antarctica and looked around there.
And then, of course, this coming June of 2011, a year from now, we are taking a group up into northern Italy to follow the trail of the Waldensians, which you kind of alluded to in the beginning when you talked about my Magdalene heritage.
Yeah, Magdalene heritage. Tell us about that.
Well, that is actually through my Waldensian side, and what most people don't know about the Waldensians, so I do encourage you to look that up online, and they don't know the true history. And even the Waldensians themselves have an issue with telling the true history, because it was not until 1848 that they were actually granted religious freedom in Italy.
Now, spell that for us, because I don't recognize that word.
It's W-A-L D as in Diane, E, N as in Nancy, S as in Sam, I, A, N as in Nancy.
But that's the Americanized version of the word, because in French it's Vaudois, which means the people of the valley, and in German it's Waldense, which means the people of the forest.
And sometimes they're referred to as the Waldenses. But they were, basically, they were descendants of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, as well as the apostles. And they have the true religion. And those people were hunted down by the Roman Catholic Church, and the Roman Catholic Church vowed to extinguish them from the face of the earth forever.
I'm shocked.
And what they did was they took the children and they basically scattered them throughout Europe into Catholic families, thinking that they could help, integrate them into Roman Catholicism. But what they really did was, today, their descendants and people who've had lifetimes there, they are waking up to their true heritage. And so when we tell people about Waldensians, they're fascinated, because they believe that they were a part of this attempt to extinguish them.
Now, wait a minute. They believe that they were a part of
the attempt to extinguish them, that they were Waldensians in what we call a simultaneous existence.
So,
but it is an amazing, amazing historical story. One of the books that we've been reading is called Rora, R-O-R-A. It's a Christian historical novel. And so you want to keep in mind it is a novel, but my family actually emigrated from the town of Rora in northern Italy. And so that is the area that we're going to in June of 2011, with a woman who takes people to the Waldensian area and who has actually studied it extensively for the last 12 years. So it's going to be an amazing, amazing trip.
Do you all think, or do you have different opinions of who Jesus was, and was he any more the Son of God than you and I are?
No, in fact, I write about that in my Blue Blood book, which I talk about how he was a genetic manipulation and creation.
Wow, he was what?
And in fact, to talk about that, there's a document called the Talmud of Emmanuel with a J, J-M-M. And so that document talks about how he was created by actually genetic manipulation by alien beings who had an agenda to steer certain groups of human beings into a certain direction for control purposes.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. How did you come up with that?
Well,
that's pretty wild, Stuart, I tell you.
Well,
But I mean, I don't discount it, but it's just I've never heard that before.
If you do your research and you look into certain areas, you will find that. And you will also find out that the person known as Jesus did not die on the cross, but actually was taken down, revived, because it was all a staged event, and that he and the oldest son went to Srinagar in what is now India-Pakistan border.
Yeah, there's certainly trails of that along the way, isn't there, that he studied different mystical religions and stuff in India. What is it? So how do I tie that back then to the Waldensians? I mean, these people then are descendants of a genetically modified person?
Well, they are genetically modified. Jesus or Emmanuel had 3 children, and that was with Mary Magdalene. And, of course, the Catholic Church, when those documents were discovered in northern Egypt, they were very upset about it and had most of the documents destroyed, and the rest went to the Vatican archives down deep below the city.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing is that Mary Magdalene and Peter did not like each other. And apparently she feared for her life from him. And so she took her 2 younger children with a whole bunch of people that were supportive of her, and they fled the Holy Land. They wound up in Turkey, they were in Malta, they were perhaps in Greece, it's believed, and finally they wound up in the south of France, in the town that is now known as Saint-Marie de la Mer, which means Saint Mary of the water, of the sea, and they still celebrate her arrival in the south of France to this very day.
And then, Janet, how does this all tie together with your, it's on your website, and you mentioned of the Magdalene lineage, where you come from. Is that connected with Mary Magdalene?
Yes, absolutely. Direct descendant of that through the Waldensians. And that's why the Roman Catholic Church tried to stamp the Waldensians out, because the Waldensians hold the truth. And their documents are hidden in the caves in northern Italy. And that's exactly where the Roman Catholics tried to extinguish them, and they said in their writings that they would wipe every single one off the face of the earth if they could. But the Waldensians held them off from their valleys, and they sent as many at times as 20,000 soldiers up into the valleys, and 500, 1,000 men from the Waldensians held them all off. Time after time after time, until it finally they chased them from their valley. So
the Waldensians are proud of the fact, or they want to get the word out that they are descendants of a genetically manipulated being?
Actually, they are hiding the history, and so they do not publicly talk about this in their valleys, because, as I mentioned earlier, it wasn't until 1848 that they were granted religious freedom. That's a little over 100 years ago. And so many of them immigrated to the United States. There are actually 3 colonies, one in New York, one in Monette, Missouri, and one in North Carolina. My family is the Monette, Missouri lineage. And many of them went into South America, down into the country of Uruguay. And so there are some Waldensian communities there. But however, most of the Waldensians, for protection, blended with the Protestant religions, some Presbyterian and some Methodist, because they considered that the lesser evil of the Roman Catholics. But Waldensians originally were not Protestant, although in some historical accounts talk about them being Protestant. They were not Protestant. They were basically the original Christians. And their doctrine they are protecting, because the Roman Catholic Church would continue to wipe them out if they let a lot of this out.
Fascinating. Janet and Stewart Swerdlow are with us. Their website, expansions.com. Wow, the first 15 minutes, my head's about to explode. I'm just going to wrap my head with duct tape so it doesn't explode. And if you'd like to join us here this morning, feel free. I'm sure you have some ideas about what they're saying, and we have a lot of ground to cover this morning. 888-663-6386. Email Patrick at oneradionetwork.com. Janet, let's talk about, on your website, you said that when you came into this incarnation, that you were kind of aware of Oversoul and Godmind. How do you define Oversoul?
Oversoul, I define as your original point out of the Godmind itself.
The original point out of the Godmind itself. Let's see. So your contention is then we are all soul. You and I are soul.
Correct.
Okay. And then we are connected in some way, do you think? And then at some point we are one but separate at the same time?
Well, everything is technically all one. And there is just the illusion of separation. And I talk about our lifetime here as being an exploration or an extension of the God-mind as it explores itself. So we are basically a finger of the God-mind. We come down here, we gather the experience, and we pass it up back to the God-mind so that it can understand itself.
Oh, I like that. So God-mind, how do you define that?
All that is.
All that is. So you're just essentially God, if we just want to say God. But why do you use the term mind with it, Janet?
Because so many people think of God as an old man sitting in the clouds.
in the clouds or something. So
I want to get them beyond that point so they understand the intelligence that exists behind all things.
Stuart, what if you wake up one morning and say, I really think God's an old man in the clouds, and you're living with this woman? I mean, how do you deal with that?
Well, if I ever do that, it's because someone slipped me too much vodka the night before.
I was raised in the Catholic religion, and I try to think back, and I don't really I don't remember what kind of image I did have of God, but it's interesting. Do you all remember the image that you had of God when you were like a little tykes, 3, 4, 5, 10 years old, in that range? Do you?
Well, me personally, I grew up in a family that was very old European, and so their image of God was the old historical version of that.
Mm-hmm.
But that never jived with me. I never felt comfortable with it, and I was always, let's say, cast aside or told I was very different because of my belief system or what I thought I knew. But of course, I like the word or the term God-mind because really, God is just mind. That's all it is. It's mind. It's pure thought, pure energy, and each one of us and everything that exists is part of that. And so there's really no separation. The separation is an illusion.
And interestingly for me, my father was actually living with a spiritualist trance medium in the late 40s. So by the time I came around, I was raised with this from the moment I was born. So for me, this is, decades of this lifeline. It's not like it came to me one day. It was always within me, and it was never closed down as it is with some people. So I did have that very fortunate support system as I was growing up, as far as, what most people think of spirituality / religion. Mm-hmm. Mine was never put into a box. I was always allowed to talk about what I saw, what I thought, what I felt, and then I was also shepherded. And my father was a very hard taskmaster, and still is. He takes me to task if he sees me doing things he doesn't like, or he wants to get a point across. He is still one of my best teachers.
To this day. So do you all, you could answer individually, then believe or have experiences that you existed as soul in some other incarnations or reincarnation before this lifetime?
I have a lot of memory of other existences where I had a lifetime, and anyone can tap into that, because if you think of your consciousness as the center point of a circle, or the dot in the center of a circle, and all of the points on the edge of the circle around you are different lifetimes and experiences, and multidimensional, so it's really you're inside of this globe, then you can pinpoint any spot, any lifetime, and tune into that to see what's going on.
Yeah, and then maybe if you were a writer, you could tap into that, and it'll help you write this lifetime.
Well, exactly. I mean, you have probably existed for thousands and thousands of lifetimes, if not hundreds of thousands. And the experiences that we've all accumulated are amazing, and we can tap into that and find any solution to any issue.
I'm sure people are asking, go ahead, Janet.
I was just going to say what I tell people, too. It's a matter of focus. For example, if that you're sitting, for now, wherever people are sitting listening, they're not thinking about their little toe. But yet if I say little toe, all of a sudden your mind goes there and you remember you have a toe. And it's the same way when you talk about simultaneous existence. It's there, but you're not focused. You're focused right now. But once we train you to focus in different aspects of yourself, then you can bring those memories, or basically they're not even memories, they're happening simultaneously.
Yeah, that's curious, because you've used that term before, and I've almost had experience, and I can't explain it, that everything is happening at the same time. So on the soul level, above, say, the mind, there probably isn't any space or time, and everything is happening at the same time?
Yeah, because space and time is an illusion. If we think about where we are right now, here, let's say in the central part of the United States, and at the same moment, it's tomorrow in Japan and Korea. So it's a different day, a different time, and yet, and it hasn't even been morning yet in Hawaii. So here we are at the same moment, and all these different times are happening on the same planet. So if we extrapolate that, infinitely, think of all the different eras in time that exist simultaneously, and we're just not focused in them at the moment, but others are.
So as above, so below.
Yeah. So do you think then that that's the reason with focus and practice and techniques that we can see past incarnations because they're going on right now?
Well, we're also conditioned when we're born not to accept that. We're trained by school and church and family to not go outside the bones of your skull, that nothing else exists outside of that.
Right.
And so children learn very quickly that they have to focus only on their physical, grounded life. But if you look at an infant, when an infant is born and you hold that in your arms, the infant is looking up and around you. It's never looking at you. It's looking at your energy field. It's looking at the archetypes and colors around you to see what kind of a person you are. If we are allowed to maintain that awareness that we have from birth, then yes, we would be able to see into all realities at any time simultaneously, and that's what we teach in our classes when we learn about the language of hyperspace.
It's kind of fun because I've heard stories over the years where the daughter would say, "Mom, I remember when I was your mother," and they go on to talk and tell, and then the mom says, "Oh, you're talking crazy. Eat your Cheerios," you know.
Mm-hmm,
and so that's just the opposite of what you're saying.
Well, and a lot of times, as Stuart was talking about, people are closed down. I talk about selective hearing. If you are in a crowd and there's a lot of verbiage around you, you can focus in on one conversation. That's selective hearing. Most people understand that concept.
Right.
Again, if you extrapolate that onto selective seeing, it's the same way. Because children they don't say, what do you see around me? You say, what's this? You point to your nose, you point to your eyes, you point to your mouth. But you don't say, what do you see around me? You create within that child selective sight. So even though everybody always sees everything, they have been trained to look past that and only focus on specific things. So what we do in our classes is we help people go back to that original way of seeing, hearing, thinking, feeling, being without all these limitations. So they get back into who and what they truly are.
So, Stuart, is that how one would begin to learn how to see auras as you do, where you're not just looking at someone's eyes or their mouth or whatever, but you begin to expand your awareness to see more like the little baby does?
Yeah, well, in fact, it's not a good idea to train to use the physical senses to see that. I always teach people to go to the center of the head where the pineal gland is located. The pineal gland is the liaison between the physical and non-physical existences. And so if you center there and you exercise that ability, then you'll be able to see beyond the normal physical senses, and then you can expand that and you can do anything. Remember, we only use less than 10% of our brain capacity.
Yeah, we've heard that.
And only 3% of our DNA. That means 97% of our DNA is not used by us, and scientists therefore call it junk because they don't know what it means. But if you understand about species and you learn about DNA, you know that 97% of all DNA, whether you're a human, an animal, a plant, an alien, doesn't matter, 97% of DNA is identical. So to me, that's proof of one creator that has made everyone foundationally the same.
Here's an email from Emily. She's in Chicago. I'm loving this. I want to learn about my past lives, but why do I want to know what happened before I came here? What benefit will it be? Thanks for the show.
Now, one thing is people want to know, who am I and how did I get to be this way? And I think what people need to understand is that their experiences did not start the minute that they were born in this reality, that they are a compilation of many, many experiences. And so by understanding what's going on simultaneously within your lifelines, you understand what's influencing you. What positively can you do to enhance that? What are the negatives that are influencing you that you might not want to be experiencing this lifeline? Who am I? What am I? Where am I going? Where did I come from? That helps answer all those kinds of questions.
Mm-hmm. I've heard people from time to time use hypnosis to see past lives. Is that a good way to do it, you all?
My feeling is that it is not, and the reason is, unfortunately, because we have a lot of programming and mind control in our society. In fact, pretty much dominant. And so when you have a situation where a person is mind control, then hypnosis has the possibility of triggering an alter forward or to trigger a function from your programming that perhaps is not ready to come out. So I think it's not a very good idea. We teach people to go within their own minds, to do it themselves and do it under their own pace and control so that they know exactly what they're seeing and what they're experiencing without any outside influence.
Yeah, I'd feel much more comfortable knowing that I was this or that and learn from that rather than somebody tell me, maybe, or...
The best knowledge is always experiential, what comes from within you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what we teach. You know, a lot of people call up and they want, help and they want somebody to heal them and so on.
Right.
We're not healers, and all we do really is we're two people with experiences, and we've found answers to some of our questions. We still have a billion more, but as we find our way, we just pass along the information that we find about ourselves. so that hopefully you can use it. If you can, great. If you can't, that's fine. Take what you can, add your own stuff. We're really just about sharing what we know with you so that you can grow in your own way.
Stuart, what kind of techniques do you use to learn more, to go deeper into truth? What do you do on a daily basis?
Well, that's a very big question because I have a whole bunch of stuff that I do. I always start my day by spinning my chakras in a proper manner, as if I were in a cylinder layered with the colors in the proper sequence. I balance my T-bar at the pineal gland so that my left and right hemispheres of the brain are completely in contact with each other and balance the energy. I put Oversoul symbol above my crown so I'm in constant contact and awareness of the God mind within myself, and then I get out of bed.
So you do all that right when you're in bed?
Yes, before I even get up, because, once you start moving, you forget things, you get diverted, and then you lose track, and that's what a lot of people tell me, that they want to do their work, but they just can't find the time to do it. So I tell them, you can do it before you even get out of bed. If you wake up a few minutes early, you can do this. It doesn't take hours and hours. Hyperspace, there is no time. So you could do a lot of work, and it'll seem like a lot, but it's only been a few moments that pass.
We're having fun talking with Janet and Stewart Swerdlow. Expansions.com. A lot of information on their website. Have 2 or 3 emails wanting to know more about your work, what you do, consultations, costs, and things like that. We may as well get that out of the way. Give yourself a little plug for your work, because I know that's how you make your house payment and stuff, or I'm just assuming. I don't want to assume too much here. But so people, how does it work if somebody wants you all to help them?
Well, first of all, I like to recommend that they read a couple basic books because they'll get more out of their personal consultation that way. Mm-hmm. So Decoding Your Life is one of the basics, and Hyperspace Helper. Those 2 books will give them good basic tools. Between those books, they'll understand our basic concepts, some of the exercises that we refer them to, and things that Stuart and I do every day. So those are 2 great books. If they like DVDs, we have one called Hyperspace and Oversoul Basics, and that's excellent to give them also the basics, which comes with a free study guide. So that's a great course to take. Sometimes people want to talk to us personally. We always tell them to do as much work as they can on their own before they come to us, because we do want them to learn experientially. But if they want to, we do have consultations available. We have people that sometimes will do them what we call email consultations. They send us their questions and we answer them and send it back via email, or they can go on the website, expansions.com, in order to book a consultation with us. And sometimes they get in the next day, and sometimes we could be scheduled 4 to 6 weeks out. It depends on the day.
What do you mean by hyperspace?
Hyperspace is a level of existence. Right now we are in physical reality. Think of that as the yolk of an egg. And think of the shell of the egg as the astral layers that contain it. Once you get outside of the shell, you're in hyperspace. It's all of the energy that puts all the eggs in the basket, so to speak. It's a zone of no time, no space, pure mind, pure energy, the source of all creation. It's the home of God mind, if you will. And each one of us is connected to that constantly and infinitely. You can't not be connected to it.
So that would be something other, this term you're using in this place, something other than, say, astral or causal or mental or physical reality, above that or outside of that.
Yeah, the ones that you mentioned are, let's say, denser energy, more concentrated energy.
Some paths call them the lower worlds.
Yes, there's different
but nothing is really lower or higher, I assume, I guess.
It's just a matter of reference so that you understand what's one from the other. But ultimately, they're all part of one God mind. It's all part of the same thing.
Do you think we incarnate on some of these different realities in and out other than physical reality?
Yes, absolutely, because God, mind, oversoul, and your soul personality have to know its true meaning of existence. So every thought you have, every what if, creates a timeline where you get an experience to learn about what happens if that thought occurred. Nothing, no energy goes wasted. Everything fits into a slot somewhere. So that's why I tell people to be very careful about what they think. Because if you have a bad day and you're thinking, I really like to kill that guy over there, and even though you know physically you're never going to do that, that energy has gone out now from you, and somewhere, some form of you in some alternate reality is going to do it.
So you think we have to deal with that thought at some point? It's got to be worked out, so to speak?
Everything. You have to be a policeman of your thoughts and really make sure that they are beneficial to everyone.
But isn't it true for many that the more we try to stop negative thoughts, for instance, Stuart and Janet, that the more they try to come?
I think that's a good point, because especially in the New Age, it was taught about, God is peace, love, and light.
Right.
What I tell people is Godmind contains all things, both positive and negative. And as a microcosm of that macrocosm, you also contain both positive and negative. And negative is not necessarily bad, and therefore it's not things that you want to stop, it's things that as they come up you want to look at and deal with. And what I do, if things come up that I don't want to deal with, I just give it on up to my Oversoul and on up into Godmind. I give it back to its source.
Give it back to God.
That's right.
Rather than try to stop it or squash it or kill it, you just kind of say, okay, God, you deal with this because I can't.
That's right. Here it is. It's your stuff. It doesn't fit in my scenario here. You take it back.
Mm-hmm.
But if you try and suppress anything, it creates more force, just like trying to hold down a spring. When you let it loose, that thing's going to go. And that's how come sometimes, people who do terrible, heinous crimes or acts out there, they'll say, oh, he was a nice, peaceful person. Well, what's brewing down there? What was pushed down and suppressed that finally unleashed its force? So I don't want anything like that happening to me. So whatever is in there, I don't want to suppress it. I want to bring it out. I want to look at it. If it's something I need, I can use it. If not, out, back to my Oversoul, back into Godmind, back to Source.
Why would you get a thought, and we'll just call it quote, negative, unquote, just to categorize something, because I guess it's all good.
Well, it is again, you want to remember, it's a microcosm of the macrocosm. Okay. Whatever is within the macrocosm is going to be within you. And what I tell people, it's like the ocean. You're not the ocean, but you're a drop of water within that ocean. And that drop of water contains basically the same components as the ocean itself. Know the drop of water, you have a better chance of knowing the ocean.
So why would you have this thought that, other than the most productive one, if it's not part of you? Could it be past life or a thought that you stuffed earlier?
It is all a part of you.
It's all a part. Everything's a part of us.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay, and that's what people have to make choices on. And all of those thoughts, both positive and negative, are one way of explaining what Godmind is. And that's what a lot of times people have a challenge grasping, because basically everything out there is neutral, and it is your reaction or your judgment to it that determines whether it's positive or negative or quote-unquote good or bad. For example, if you're in a forest and you're a little child and you're lost in the forest, you're going to label the forest a bad thing. If you're an adult and you're out for a leisurely walk, you're going to label the forest a good thing. So the forest itself is neutral. It's the experience and how you judge it that determines good or bad, quote-unquote positive or negative, because we are in a reality of duality.
Stuart, what kind of tips can you give us that we all fall into when we react to things that we shouldn't, rather than give them to God or just let them go, that we'll react to it and then get involved in conversations and relationships we don't really want?
Well, first of all, I always talk about how we project out the thought patterns that are reflected for us in the world. And I use the analogy that your thoughts are like film, your brain is the projector, and physical reality is the screen. So if you're not happy with the movie that's playing around you, you have to change the film, which is the way that you think. So we talk about correcting or altering the mind patterns within ourselves through release work, oversoul work, etc., and also, unfortunately, through deprogramming, because we have constant artificial information and overlays thrown into our mind patterns that are not really originating within us. And so we have to do a lot of deprogramming work as well, which I write about in my 13Q book and True Reality book. And So so the other thing is, if we keep our mind patterns balanced, like the T-bar that I mentioned earlier, we keep our left and right hemispheres of the brain balanced, and even balance that with the reptilian brainstem, then the thoughts that we project out will be more even and not go to extremes, and we'll be very satisfied with the situations that we create.
Let's use your camera explanation. So the thoughts you're saying are like the film, and what was in that?
The brain is the projector.
The brain is the projector.
And physical reality is the screen.
Is the screen.
So basically, you're creating everything that you see, feel, and experience.
Mm-hmm. So we've created it all.
Correct. We must each take responsibility for every experience, every item that we have in our lives.
Yeah. So how do you and I and our listeners kind of get our heads around the idea that we say we're co-creators in some form of maybe things like Katrina or the BP oil disaster? So what is that about?
Well, for example, we look at an experience, a hurricane, a disaster, whatever it may be. If we read about it, hear about it, or experience it, that means part of us, whether a large part or a small part, but some part of us is contributing to that experience, to that event. So we need to look at what that means to us personally. Where did we create a hurricane in our lives? Where is our whirlwind of our emotions going on and getting out of hand? Where are we leaking from within ourselves the blood of our within ourselves, the energy of our minds leaking out and polluting everything around us in a bad way? We have to look within and say, okay, if I stop that, then I will stop projecting whatever portion of this event I'm projecting out, and it'll be that much better. And if everybody gets together and does that and stops projecting out all of these experiences that are harmful and dangerous, then we can actually fix the entire Earth.
So these experiences, like a Katrina, just using these as examples, a BP thing, it's kind of a shared experience. All of us have somehow created this.
We are each, if we experience it, no matter how we experience it, we are co-creators.
We are co-creators of it.
Well, for example, I just want to add too,
sure, go ahead.
That if people had taken the negative within themselves and passed it up, it would not have had the opportunity to express itself through the earth. So through the oil spill, through Katrina, through these things you're talking about, people suppress it, and then it feeds other things.
People suppress it, and it feeds other. Give us an example, Janet, of how that works.
For example, let's say earthquakes. Earthquakes are about shaking things up. It's suppression of people's inner thoughts and usually angers, because there's a lot of violence in earthquakes. So as you push it down within yourself, then you feed that into whatever is out into the earth. It reflects that back, and it can use that energy then to come back at you. If people take a look at something outside of them as the enemy, but quote-unquote they're their own enemy, if they would deal with their issues as they come up, then they would not have such things being projected in the outer world. So
we as souls for a long, long time have not been dealing with our issues because we just not really known how to do it or whatever. Then that's part and parcel of this whole Earth Changes 2012 thing, because it's all a creation of all of us.
That's correct.
That's true. And the reason physical reality exists in the first place is because we weren't able to internalize our thoughts. We refused to accept them. So the solution for Godmind is, okay, then you have to externalize them and experience them from without and have it reflected back to you. So for every issue we have, there is a solution. And the more difficult we make it, the more harsh the experience is going to be.
And also, people have gotten this way because let's take a look and go one step further at the people who would try and control the other people, the handlers of the earth. They're only stirring up and creating like a smoke screen of doubt and confusion, and then they use that smoke screen back against the people. They are the ones that are most affected.
Oh, let's see. I kind of lost you there. In other words, agencies, governments, or whatever, lying to us. They're part of the game, and they're trying to trick us into becoming more confused?
Yes, in some ways, yes. So as we become confused and we have the angers and we have all the resentments and the bitterness and the emotional overwhelming, all those things they can take those and use them against us. They can turn the emotions that are suppressed into a hurricane or flooding, or they can use them turn them into oil spills. So everything is pure energy, pure thought, as Stuart talks about. It's the way that we put them together and utilize them.
But I'd like to say something,
sure.
and I say this very often, is that the reason all of these things happen on the Earth is because humanity as a species has a victimization mind pattern. And when you have 7 billion people with a victimization mind pattern projecting that out, you're going to attract tyrants and oppressors and catastrophes. So we as a species, as well as an individual, need to correct the mind pattern so that we no longer attract and create these experiences.
I see. So, yeah. But I would assume then that the only thing that you or I, Janet or Stuart or Patrick or our listeners can do is take care of our own consciousness. Guys like you help people because that's your work. But in general, most of us just have enough to do just trying to clean up our own consciousness.
Well, basically, the work that we do is clearing up our own,
right.
And that's a lot of times people, again, I don't know how other people are, but they'll want to assume that Stuart and I know everything because this is our work.
Right.
Well, I just say, you know what, we've got lots of issues, and that's why this is our work, because we are cleaning up ourselves, and this is how we clean up ourselves.
Yeah.
And so everybody can do the same, and if everybody just takes care of themselves and cleans up their own corner, what is reflected or projected out is going to have an effect. People are going to want to know, hey, how come your life is going, this way or that way? What are you doing? And that is going to have an effect on everybody. So everybody has the opportunity to influence as many people as Stuart and I do, and maybe more.
Do you think that's why we're here? One of the reasons to help others? So
we're here to understand why we need to externalize our thoughts, to take responsibility, and then to become examples for others so that they can also learn from it.
Stuart, I want to go back a bit because I really love the visualization you had about leaking, blood leaking and all of that, and the oil spill. Well, what if Patrick or one of our listeners or Stuart or Janet does what you're suggesting and really does the work as we go and as we understand it and, deals with all those things, wraps them up and works them out and all of that. But then the oil spill is still going on. I don't understand, because if I do all that for myself, how is it connected with other 6 billion people that maybe haven't? And then so the oil spill is still in my reality, but maybe I've done the work to kind of clean it up. Do you understand my question?
Well, I think what you would experience then, if you do your work and let's say the others don't,
yeah,
then that event won't affect you. You will be immune from whatever the results are.
It'll still go on because everybody gets to experience what they want, but it doesn't have to affect Patrick or Janet or one of our listeners.
Exactly correct.
And I tell people, too, just because it's out there doesn't mean you have to participate. People talk about, I can't sell my house because, it's a bad economy. And I said, you know what? You only need one buyer. So, you know what? You have no excuse not to sell your house. Or I can't find a job because the economy is bad. One person, one job, you can do it. And I want to extrapolate that a little further, something that I read many years ago. It was about an interview with an older Jewish woman who survived the Holocaust. And she said, it's people would come to her and say, oh, you survived the Holocaust. What a miracle. And she'd say, no. She said, my family was wealthy. We rented a railroad car. We loaded up all our possessions. We took all our servants, and we had a party as we rode through the front lines. She said, it was not a harrowing experience for me personally. And so my point is that regardless of what harrowing experiences are going on out there, if it's not in your mind pattern to participate, then you don't have to. So yes, it's going to be out there in some way, shape, or form, and it's obviously further and further away as you deal with yourself. And I think that's what's important, because people feel, as Stuart mentioned, as a victim. There's no need to be a victim unless you accept a victim mentality. And we are here to help you and to say you don't have to be a victim regardless of what's going on out there.
It's a huge victim consciousness, as Stuart mentioned, I suppose. And what do you suppose that stems from? Is that like one of the big lessons for our society in this 2010? The victim thing, Stuart?
You know, it all goes back to very spiritual concepts. And that is, in the very beginning, all there was Godmind. And as Godmind contemplated itself, it started to reflect on itself, and that reflection created Oversoul and soul personalities, and on and on and on, etc. Because each level reflects the same thing, and down and down and down. But the more it reflects away, the more dense the energy becomes, and the more solidified it becomes. And so as you get to consciousnesses that exist, further down the line, they feel more separated from the original God mind. And as they feel separated, there's abandonment issues, isolation issues that develop, and then all of these peripheral mind patterns and victimization are created and then are projected out. And that's why we have the situation we have now. And so for every situation, there's a correction, and that's what we're trying to experience now.
Here's an email from Bettina in south of Vienna in Austria. I heard you had Stuart on. Please ask this question. Stuart, do you feel or think that nature will come up with a new bacteria or enzyme to battle the oil spill in the Gulf region out of our own response without making doctrine round there or making things worse?
Well, that's an interesting question, and I will say that if we had thousands of years to wait, yes, possibly nature would come up with a correction, but we don't have thousands of years to wait. I think that we need to do something organically to correct this, and there are bacteria that we have now that can remove that oil, but the powers that be have no interest in doing that because they want to create the disaster. There's a whole bunch of things going on down there. In fact, the capped pipe is not what created the oil spill anyway. There's fractures underneath the seafloor that are releasing this oil. And so everything is for public consumption down there. So I guess my main answer is yes, nature could fix it, but we don't have the time to wait for that.
And even if there was, you have to remember, even if there was a correction, which somewhere in some reality there is, as Stuart mentioned, the powers that be don't want that happening. There is an agenda. There is a reason why this is happening. And, of course, the people's mind pattern that is being a victim is allowing that to happen, and those who are in control are forcing the issue. There is a reason.
And then how do you work with the idea of being aware of that, understanding that, and looking at that as interesting information, but not getting caught up in the drama of it so you're affected by it?
Well, again, it goes back to balancing and to working on your own mind pattern and stopping to ground yourself before you react. You know, it's very easy to react in a negative and outlandish way to situations that are confronting you.
Yeah.
But we have to take that moment to stop, center ourselves at the pineal, ground and balance, and then see what the response would be in a more even way.
And another thing is I like to talk about when not too many years ago here in the U.S. our fuel prices went from, practically $1.50 up to practically $5 a gallon. And people, what were they doing? They were getting rid of big cars. They were, going down to motor scooters. They were downsizing, which was the exact effect that what people wanted them, the powers that be wanted them to do, because the car represents a person's mind pattern and your path through life. And so another response could have been, hey, then I'm going to go earn more money. God mind is limitless. I'm not going to allow this to affect me. If it's $5 a gallon and it's quadrupled, I'm going to do something to expand my own way. I'm not going to be a victim to fuel prices. I'm still going to do what I want and not participate in it. And all of this is about that. These are all tests that allow people to grow to their next level and not become a victim to the level that would be put upon them.
Here's an email from Jim. He says, I was wondering if Stuart and Janet could discuss what is going on with the Kuiper's belt, K-U-I-P...
Kuiper's belt.
I've never heard of that. Kuiper's belt. What's that?
Yes, that's the region that surrounds the outer rim of our solar system. I've written about that extensively or somewhat on my website. And, Jim, I would love to tell you more about it, but it would take several days. for me to discuss it. Suffice to say that there is an amassing of some intelligence out there that has an agenda pointed towards this planet, and I think it has the Illuminati a bit upset. That doesn't mean that they are our saviors, by no means, because it's just another agenda trying to impose itself on us. So that is a whole complicated situation, which I will be discussing at my October conference this year here in St. Joseph.
In St. Joseph, Michigan.
Yeah.
Seems like there's a lot of control kind of karma that we all have, or people everywhere wanting to control our consciousness or our reality and what happened. Boy, so that's kind of like this huge karmic kind of lesson we're all of us souls are learning this time?
Well, you know, it's also...
Or you think we've always learned it in every lifetime?
I think we're supposed to learn it in every existence.
Maybe we haven't.
Yeah, but you know, this particular planet, this particular solar system, you know, like in real estate, location.
Right.
We're in a very good location for those who have an agenda for invasion and control. It's just a very strategic area.
This is interesting. Here's an email from John. I check your site every day for the Illuminati news. We don't do that much, but he still checks our site. Please tell me more about how Jesus was formed by aliens.
Well, I don't think we have enough time left on the show, but if you're...
Can you guys stay a little longer, or do you have to leave?
Well, Janet has a schedule there. I don't know.
We could maybe do just a bit more.
Like how long? 20 minutes, 15?
20 minutes we could do.
Okay, let's take a few more emails. But go ahead. So go ahead and do that. We'll break at the top of the hour. But get into that a little bit, because there's another email here from Georgia wants to know more about the alien-Jesus connection. I think he really flipped a switch there.
Okay, well, actually, I would encourage everyone to read my Blue Blood book, because I do go into an explanation there. But I will tell you that humanity, I have to go back into history, and basically this Earth was primarily colonized by reptilian androgynous beings who had an agenda to control the entire solar system and region of the galaxy.
How long ago do you suspect?
That was about 1 million years ago at least. And it's a very long story. The configuration of our solar system was very different than it is now. The Earth was really in the second position from the Sun. There was a civilization where all humanity came from, called the Lyrian star system. That was attacked by the reptilians. The Lyrian refugees spread out, came to this solar system as well as others, and the reptilians followed and attacked them. And they sent an ice comet into our solar system that ultimately took up the second position in the Sun, which became the planet Venus, and the Earth was pushed to the third position. And then the reptilians drove a vehicle into our solar system to colonize the Earth, and we call that vehicle the Moon. And the Moon is really an artificial object. So I'm making a very, very long story short of condensing hundreds of thousands of years into moments. But that's the ultimate history there. And then the reptilians created a civilization on a continent that was then called Lemuria, or we have called it Lemuria. And human civilization colonized what became Atlantis afterwards. There was wars between them, and the reptilians created... they were defeated, their continent sank, they went underground, and they decided to retake the surface by creating religious and cultural hybridization programs, if you will, in order to reconquer humanity without humanity realizing what was going on. And religion was part of that. And creating religious icons, and I know that I might be offending or insulting religious people out there, but, you know, I just say what I know, and you can accept or reject it as you see fit. And the story of Jesus or Emmanuel is really the story of trying to skewer mankind into a certain way through creating different religious belief systems. The difference is, though, that through Emmanuel's training in Egypt and India and other places, he actually pulled away from that agenda and went more into the spiritual mode. So he actually sabotaged his own creators, or part of the plan that they had.
I also want to mention that we have some good DVDs, because, as Stuart said, we have written extensively and talked extensively on these subjects. So for those people who want more, we have one DVD called Conspiracy Con, which is an excellent introduction. We have one called True World History, Part 1 and Part 2, which address these subjects in detail, and also DNA, Galactic History, and You. So those are 3 excellent DVDs for people who want a lot more than what we can possibly give you on this show.
Do you all get information other than physical reality for your work?
Yes, we get both from physical and non-physical sources.
We do our work, and that's what we teach other people to do. So we don't want people saying this is true because Janet and Stuart say it's true. This is true because I know it's true. And we teach people how to go out, get their own information, discern what's truth and what's not truth. Because the best way to hide a pebble is on a beach with a lot of similar pebbles. So how do you find that one true pebble? That's what we teach people how to do.
Janet and Stewart Swerdlow are here, and they have agreed to stick around for a few more minutes, so keep your emails coming. We've got some more, and no one has called on the phone. There's lots of you listening this morning. Don't be shy. If you'd like to speak with them one-on-one, you can do it, 888-663-6386. Their website, expansions.com. Patrick Timpone. It's exactly 10 o'clock Central Time. We'll have open phones here in a few minutes after we let Janet and Stuart go. They've agreed to stay for a few more minutes. If you haven't heard, if you're just tuning in, check out the first hour. A lot of cool stuff. It'll make your head explode. So bring duct tape and just tape your head, and then you'll be fine. 888-663-6386. Their website, expansions.com. Janet and Stewart Swerdlow. Well, you guys must talk about fun stuff over dinner. I mean, come on.
There are never any dull moments in our household.
I bet not. Is there anything spiritually, metaphysically that you really, no matter how much you love each other, that you just disagree on right now?
Not much.
No.
We're pretty fortunate. I think we probably pick at each other more for the little things than the big things. So the big things we agree on. The little things, sometimes that's when we get into it.
What do you all think about the dreams, their significance, and do you have dream experiences that you share together?
Yes, and in fact, I have a whole seminar on dream analysis, and I always say that the dream experience is as valid as your waking experience. It's just that the symbolism might be a little bit different, or the rules and regulations are different. You know, people sleep approximately 7 or 8 hours a day if you're lucky, and that's 1/3 of your day, and if you extrapolate that into the human life span, average about 75 years, that means you're sleeping for 25 years of your life.
Wow. Might as well do something, right?
Yeah, it's a quarter of a century. You should know what's going on at that time.
And what I tell people, too, is if they would pay as much attention to their waking life as they did to their dream life and extrapolate those dream interpretations into their waking life, again, they would be using more of their mind and understanding more of what they're doing, how they're doing, why they're doing, when they're doing.
Do you think that there's a benefit to our dream experiences and that reality, even if we don't recall them?
Yeah, because the dreams are basically a statement of your life at the moment. Everything that you dream is a symbol. And so if you interpret the symbols and understand what the meanings are, then you can understand what your mind pattern is trying to explain to you and show you.
Are the symbols different for everyone, their own unique symbols?
There are unique symbols for each person, but there are also foundational symbols for humanity that are common to all people.
Do you think when you and I etch up a little bit in consciousness that everybody kind of gets it a little bit?
Well, yeah, it's kind of like the 100th monkey syndrome.
Yeah. Do you think so?
Absolutely. But, you know, I'll tell you what, we are up against very heavy technology on this planet. So very often people will say to me, well, I heard, you know, if 1% of the population would believe in such and such, everything would change. I disagree with that. I think that because of the ELF and the microwave bombardment that's 24/7 now everywhere, I really feel it's over 50%, 51+% would have to change in order for the mind patterns of humanity to change.
Okay, let's take this call. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Colorado.
Go ahead, you're on the air.
Thank you. Hi, Stuart. Hi, Janet.
Hello.
I'm new to your work. Just been spending all weekend listening to different stuff.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I heard something. So anyways, I'm planning on getting a scan myself next month. But I wanted to know, I have a son with Down syndrome, and I was wondering is that an Illuminati agenda? What are disabilities, and how does it play into the bigger picture?
Well, that's an interesting question, and Down syndrome is unique to humanity. There are no other species on Earth that have that kind of a genetic anomaly. And my opinion is, and there are other scientific opinions that agree, that Down syndrome is proof of alien manipulation of human genetics because of the mismatch of the chromosomes. Yeah, and by the way, I do feel, in fact I know, that this can be corrected. There are various methodologies, techniques, and even unconventional medical techniques that can be used in order to reverse this.
Oh, so there's hope for her little one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I don't vaccinate him, and I don't give him medicine, conventional medicine, but...
Well, that's wise. That's wise to stay away from all conventional medicines. All of them contain aluminum, lead, mercury, cadmium, all kinds of things that are damaging to the liver, the brain, and the kidneys, and all of the organs. And so it's wise to stay away from that kind of treatment.
Do you think that means that I was manipulated with my DNA particularly, or it's just somewhere randomly?
There's no random, there's no accident. Everything that happens is for a purpose. And of course, when I scan a person and I look at them in the consultation, then I know what was going on.
Do you have to scan me or my child? Because I don't know which to ask for next month when I call in to you.
Well, I could look at both.
You just have to be sure and provide complete birth names of both and birth dates. We do use that to zero in on your specific soul personality and on anyone about whom you would inquire.
I was going to choose is 90 minutes long enough to do that? Because I just didn't know on your website.
I could do that in 90 minutes, absolutely.
For 90 minutes. Okay, beautiful. Well, I am so enjoying everything, and I've learned so much, especially the brown grounding. So I appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks for calling,
sweetie.
sweetie.
Your call.
Thanks for calling.
Bye-bye.
So do you think it's possible that little soul in that Down syndrome body right now chose this lady to be her mom?
Absolutely. There's no accident.
No accidents. So maybe this soul needed to have this experience for one reason or another that we don't know, but she chose this mom because they kind of knew that he was going to help him get out of it, so it wouldn't be a total life of this. Or anything's possible, I guess.
Everything is possible.
Everything is possible. I like that. Everything is possible.
And that's why there is infinite realities and alternate parallel universes, because everything you can think of is going to happen somewhere.
Wow. All right, here's from Victoria. Patrick, I'm curious about your guest perspective on the 2012 and the presently occurring shift in consciousness. Could you please ask them about their knowledge of experience with higher energies that so many other healers, astrologers, and energy workers say are saturating us at this time?
Well, that's a very leading question, Patrick.
Yeah, I know it is.
Well, I'm just going to say what I know, and a lot of people may not like it or accept it, but 2012 is a programming agenda. It's not anything that's going to... It's not the end of the earth, okay? The Mayan calendar is a circle, and that's why it's a circle, because it keeps going and going and going. The Mayan calendar has had several times in histories where it ended like that, and then it picked up and kept going. And it was basically geared towards the Mayan civilization and not to the entire Earth. And I also want to point out that the Mayan calendar is based on sunspot activity, really. And so we have to look at it from that perspective. But the Illuminati take esoteric or hidden information that no one understands like this, and then they extrapolate it into New Age dribble, as I call it, to scare people, because they know fear creates programming abilities. When you're fearful, your crown chakra, your pineal open up, and they can put stuff in you.
Yeah. Now, the other thing is, too, when they're talking about the higher energies coming in, then people are looking for higher energies, so to speak, if you want to use that term, and they're not looking at these underhanded things that are coming on, and they can get slipped into them quite easily.
So this whole 2012 thing, you think, is just a powers that be creation?
Absolutely, and there are Mayan elders that actually laugh at this, and there was one who said that on December 22nd, 2012, he's going to get up like always, put the TV on, and have a cup of coffee like he always does.
Kind of like 2012, what was it, Y2K2 or whatever it was?
Yeah, which I told people then. I said, don't worry, your computers are going to be fine. And they were.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the biggest fear was in the people's heads.
So then you suppose that we souls, then we're all creating this whole economic, geopolitical kind of quagmire we've got ourselves into, because it's just all a creation of our thoughts and our fears.
Yes, and we also, because of that, allow others who would take advantage of humanity to do so.
And it's just like what I talked about earlier in the housing. You know, when they were broadcasting all over the news about how terrible things were with the housing and jobs, I'm talking to a banker, and she says, it's not affecting my area, sales are great. You know, and this is what's happening, is they decide on an agenda, they invoke fear, and the fear within the people is what creates an economic downturn or a housing downturn or job market losses. It's the fear within each person. If people didn't pay attention, and then things go away. For example, think when they tried to do the smallpox vaccine, and people would not jump on that bandwagon.
They just didn't do it.
It went away.
It went away.
And there are many of those campaigns, if people would pay attention, that if people aren't responding, they go away, and voila, a new one comes up until they get something to grab you by your fear, and you've had it. It's just like a dog. A dog can smell fear in you, and so can the handlers, and they will turn that and use it against you.
Isn't that a great spiritual principle, that when you just don't pay attention to it, it goes away?
Yeah.
I mean, wow, you know, it's like, whoa.
That's all part of the mind pan. If you don't project it out, it's not going to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, in our closing moments, so our shows, a lot of them, Janet and Stuart, are about health and nutrition. We do quite a bit. So where does that put us karmically, and what kind of tips, if we were, in fact, engineered genetically by alien beings, and other people have been on the show to suggest that, how do we figure out, you know, to keep this body really working on all cylinders? It's very difficult. You know,
it is.
It's a challenge of all this stuff we've got going on with EMFs and mercury coal-fired plants and plastics and, God, stress, right?
Yeah. Well, I always tell people to eat as organically as possible. You know, drink distilled water, do your energetic work, your chakra work, your T-bar balancing, your breathing work, your release work. Do all these things so that if you energetically clear yourself, then your physical will follow.
And as we're talking about, really, all healing is in the mind. And so a lot of people, again, they get frightened. I won't be able to get this food, or I won't be able to get that vitamin, you know. Then they're relying on outer things. They must learn to rely upon the mind. Self, Oversoul, God, Mind. Put all that together, and everything else will follow, including whatever you need to maintain the physical structure, because that's got to be a reflection of what's going on within the mind itself.
It almost feels like we are learning how to heal everything just with as ourselves as soul and the mind, because someday we may not have some of these supplements.
Absolutely.
So God's just kind of saying, okay, kids, well, get on with it, because you might not have this stuff.
That's right. You look to your source. That's where all your answers are. It's not in the outer world. It's internal. Go there first.
Stuart and Janet, just been great having you on. It's really been a kick, and maybe we can do it again sometime. And is there a CD, Stuart, that you can recommend, or a DVD, that gives folks some of these different little things you do in the morning, teaches them how to do that? Is that possible?
Yes, we have a DVD called the Hyperspace and Oversoul Basics.
Okay.
And that's available on our site, expansions.com.
Hyperspace and Oversoul Basics. That goes through the thing you're talking about, T-bars and chakra.
Yeah, exactly.
Teaches you how to do that.
Yes, sir. Does so.
And you do it in bed before you even get out of bed.
You'd be surprised what you can do in bed, Patrick.
Well, yeah, I know, but I'm Italian Scorpio, so don't let me go in that direction.
Well, I'm a Scorpio. I'm a Russian Scorpio.
Oh my God! We didn't even talk about your relatives starting communism and stuff. We'll do that on another day. You all, it's lovely speaking with you.
Same here.
No, we appreciate your invitation, Patrick. We look forward to doing it again.
Well, we'd love to do it, and it's expansions.com, right?
Yes.
All right. Janet and Stewart Swerdlow, and we kept him over a little bit.